She's the socialite who was a big name in American and British high society for decades, hosting glamorous dinner parties and hanging out with powerful people. But did Ghislaine Maxwell use her connections for something unimaginable? She stands accused of grooming underage girls for her ex-boyfriend and confidant, Jeffrey Epstein. Yet while her name is now infamous,
Ghislaine Maxwell.
Ghislaine Maxwell.
Ghislaine Maxwell.
She's still somewhat of a riddle wrapped in a mystery who managed to evade the FBI for nearly a year. So who exactly is Ghislaine Maxwell? Ghislaine Noël Marion Maxwell was born in France on Christmas Day in 1961, the ninth and youngest child of Elizabeth and Robert Maxwell, a newspaper baron and Member of Parliament. But more about him later. She grew up in Headington Hill Hall in Oxford, a lavish mansion with more than 50 rooms. She went first to Oxford High School. From there, she went to Marlborough College, one of the most expensive public schools in the country. She then studied at Balliol College, Oxford. It's widely reported that Ghislaine was her father's favourite child, hence he named his luxury yacht after her. In an interview with Tatler in 2000, she called her father inspiring. Robert Maxwell's biographer wrote that from the time Ghislaine was at Oxford, her father forbade her boyfriends from coming to the house or being seen with her. He suspected that any man seeking his daughter was a gold digger. Reports suggest Robert wanted his youngest daughter to marry John F. Kennedy Jr., thus creating a powerful dynasty. Indeed, to understand Ghislaine, we need to know more about her father, how he came into wealth, and how he made the Maxwell name a fixture of British high society.
His life has been the stuff of novels. So remarkable was his rise from poverty to millionaire, then his fall and his ability to bounce back again.
Jan Ludwig Hock was born into a Jewish Orthodox family in then Czechoslovakia in 1923. He managed to flee during the war. However, his parents and much of his immediate family died in the Holocaust. His wife Elizabeth said that when she studied her husband's genealogy, "I put a little Star of David in front of all the people who had been murdered in the camps. And when I unfolded it, it was like a shower of yellow stars, right through 3 generations." Elizabeth would later devote her life to honouring those who died in the Holocaust, and in 1987 she founded the Holocaust and Genocide Studies Journal. Robert himself would help Soviet Jews move to Israel and invested heavily in the country. During the war, Maxwell fought for both the Czechoslovak resistance and then the British Army, and became a naturalised British citizen shortly after the end of the war, changing his name to Robert Maxwell. He ran a powerful publishing company, Pergamon Press,
and no one has any doubt that Pergamon is a sound business,
and served as the Labour Member of Parliament for Buckingham in the 1960s. Then in 1984, he bought the Mirror Group newspapers, becoming the media baron rival to Rupert Murdoch.
This quest of yours for a national newspaper, is it because you really are after power?
Well, no, it is not because I'm after power. I certainly would hope to make a small contribution with the help of these newspapers, if I become proprietor, to halting the retreat of Great Britain, which has gone on for so long that the natives have forgotten that they're going backwards.
How tough a proprietor do you think you are?
How tough I am, or whether I'm friendly or rows, you must ask those people that work with me. I tend not to have rows.
Maxwell also owned Oxford United and Derby County, but he was prevented by the authorities from adding Watford to the list.
If my family hadn't got involved in Oxford, Oxford would have been finished. Same applies to Derby.
For his daughter, Maxwell made her director of his football club, Oxford United. But she also went her own way, founding something called the Kit Kat Club, a group that brought together powerful women from the arts. The author, Anna Pasternak, attended the meetings and told the Telegraph, "Ghislaine was very mindful of who you were, your status, your importance. I think it was more a way of advancing herself, making contacts that could be useful to her." But tragedy struck in 1991. Robert Maxwell disappeared from his yacht, the Lady Ghislaine, off the Canary Islands.
At 11 o'clock, a business call from New York was put through to Mr. Maxwell's stateroom. That went unanswered, alerting the captain, who raised the alarm. An air and sea search was launched. Several hours later, Mr. Maxwell's body was found by the pilot of a Spanish sea rescue helicopter, winched aboard and taken to Las Palmas.
His funeral took place in Jerusalem and was attended by both the Israeli president and prime minister. He was then buried on the Mount of Olives. But it emerged that Maxwell had left debts of £400 million, and that led to conspiracy theories about his death. There were reports he was the agent for the Israeli intelligence agency, Mossad, and had threatened to divulge secrets. thus prompting his murder.
One day they make him a KGB agent, the next day he's a Mossad agent, the third day he's a CIA agent. The poor man, I mean, he would have had a life dedicated to spying, you know, and when you think of what he pushed into his life, where on earth would he have found the time? Without him, somehow, life is cold out there.
And it was revealed that Maxwell had illegally taken more than £300 million worth of pension money, leaving thousands of employees fearing the worst for their future.
In 1988, he was defrauding his staff at Mirror Group newspapers of their pension funds. But he still filmed this corporate video, effectively leading his lambs to the slaughter.
I'm addressing you today for the purpose of persuading you that it is in your and your family's best interest to remain a member of whichever pension scheme you are a member of in our group.
It took them nearly 4 years to receive compensation for the funds that Maxwell had taken from them.
The pensioner in his own heart, he knows the trauma that we went through. And to say that, you know, oh, well, it's all over. No, it never will be over. Not in my eyes, and I don't think it will with 32,000 other pensioners either.
In the aftermath of his death, his sons Kevin and Ian declared bankruptcy. Both sons went on trial for fraud, but both were later acquitted. But what about Ghislaine? The death of her father was not just a personal tragedy, it changed her life. She appeared on the boat 2 days after his death to deliver a statement and told reporters, "I think he was murdered."
I also want to take this opportunity to thank all the many hundreds of people who have sent messages of support.
For the socialite Ghislaine, the Maxwell name was not what it once had been in England, and she started a new life in New York. But who did she begin this next chapter with? Now she was without the gaze and guidance of her powerful and beloved father. Well, in November 1992, over a year after her father's death, an article appeared in the Mail on Sunday about how Ghislaine had been spotted getting on a Concorde flight from London to New York. Travelling with her was a greying, plumpish, middle-aged American businessman who managed to avoid the photographers. His name is Jeffrey Epstein, a shadowy, almost maverick New York property developer who for over a year has helped Ghislaine become a coveted fixture on the Manhattan social scene. During the last year, say friends, she has fallen in love with him and the couple are inseparable. Some acquaintances claim that Epstein controlled Maxwell and that he was an incredibly manipulative man. Other reports suggest Maxwell worshipped Epstein, with friends saying Ghislaine thought they might get married one day. However, according to charges filed in New York, Ghislaine Maxwell is now accused of facilitating Epstein's sexual exploitation and abuse of multiple girls from 1994 to 1997. The charges continue. Maxwell assisted and contributed to Jeffrey Epstein's abuse of minor girls by, among other things, helping Epstein to recruit, groom, and ultimately abuse victims known to Maxwell and Epstein to be under the age of 18. Maxwell denies everything. But who was Epstein himself? Born in Brooklyn, he was a college dropout who found himself at Bear Stearns in the 1970s before founding his own company. If Ghislaine is somewhat of a mystery, so too was Epstein, who owned private jets, mansions, and his own island, and yet the source of much of his wealth was always unknown. But it's reported that Ghislaine offered Epstein a bit of glamour and someone who could connect him to high society in New York and beyond. An investment banker who went to a dinner party hosted by Epstein and Ghislaine said that the real draw of those events was Ghislaine herself. He said Maxwell seemed to be half ex-girlfriend, half employee, half best friend, and fixer. Figures with connections to both Maxwell and Epstein include Donald Trump and Bill Clinton. And one of Maxwell's contacts was Prince Andrew, who said he met Epstein through Ghislaine in 1999, and the three are believed to have met up on several occasions. And it was in Ghislaine's townhouse in London that Virginia Giuffre alleges she was forced to have sex with Prince Andrew. Buckingham Palace says the Duke of York emphatically denies having any form of sexual contact or relationship with Virginia Giuffre, and that any claim to the contrary is false and without foundation. In 2000, Maxwell moved into a townhouse on the Upper East Side of Manhattan, just a few blocks from Epstein's mansion. It was this mansion that was named in court documents relating to Maxwell's arrest. It was here that Epstein's victims were groomed and/or abused, along with his other residences, an estate in Palm Beach, Florida, a ranch in Santa Fe, New Mexico, as well as Maxwell's personal London residence. The court documents say that Ghislaine helped to procure the underage women for Epstein.
After developing a rapport with the victims, Maxwell then tried to normalize sexual abuse with a minor victim through a process known as grooming. For example, Maxwell would discuss sexual topics with the victim and undress in front of the victim, or be present for sex acts involving the minor victims and Epstein.
Of course, Epstein himself was originally charged in 2006 and pleaded guilty 2 years later to procuring for prostitution a girl below the age of 18. He was sentenced to over a year in prison. But Ghislaine appeared unaffected by Epstein's fall. Here she is at the wedding of Chelsea Clinton in 2010, and she appeared at numerous public events on both sides of the Atlantic between 2009 and 2013. She also found the Terra Mar Project during this time, an organisation that sought to protect the world's oceans.
On one of my first submarine dives, I was absolutely so excited. I thought, my goodness, I'm going to see a new sea creature. I'm going to be this amazing explorer. And off I was. I went down into the deep, and I went down to over 1,500 feet. And at 1,500 feet, I switched on the lights, hoping to see a new mythical sea creature. But in fact, what I saw was a plastic hanger. I was so absolutely devastated, but it was at that moment that I realized that I was really going to dedicate the rest of my life to taking an involvement with and bringing an education around the ocean.
It was only until the Epstein scandal once again emerged that she retreated from public life. Beginning in 2014, Virginia Giuffre accused Maxwell of acting as Epstein's madam. Maxwell said she was innocent, with Giuffre then suing Ghislaine for defamation. Maxwell and Giuffre settled that case in 2017. In a deposition from July 2016, Ghislaine said under oath that she was unaware of Epstein's sexual abuse. Quote, she said, "I wasn't aware that he was having sexual activities with anyone when I was with him other than myself." She was then asked, "I want to be sure that I'm clear. It's your testimony that in the 1990s and 2000s, you were not aware that Mr. Epstein was having sexual activities with anyone other than yourself and the blonde and brunette on those few occasions when they were involved with you?" Ghislaine said, "That is my testimony. That is correct." However, that testimony is now being used in the case against her, with Ghislaine being accused of perjury. Epstein himself was arrested in New Jersey on July 6, 2019 on sex trafficking charges and transferred to the Metropolitan Correctional Center in New York City. On August 10th, he was found unconscious in his cell and declared dead. After Epstein's death, Ghislaine was nowhere to be seen. For nearly a whole year, this well-connected socialite was now a hermit with no seemingly fixed abode. But the FBI said it had been discreetly keeping tabs on her, and she had slithered away to a gorgeous property. And after nearly 1 year, Ghislaine was found here, in a tucked-away property in New Hampshire called Tucked Away. The FBI accuses her of the sexual exploitation and abuse of multiple girls, including some as young as 14. She now faces up to 35 years in prison if found guilty of assisting Epstein's abuse of minors. She has repeatedly denied any wrongdoing. It is the latest shocking chapter in the life of someone born into huge privilege and who had huge power and influence, but is now accused of helping Epstein commit the most unspeakable crimes.